An INFJ rarely shows their breaking point. They hide it behind calm smiles, gentle tones, and silent endurance. But when they finally reach it, everything changes. The shift isn't loud or chaotic, it's precise, focused, and unstoppable. Their kindness turns into clarity, their patience becomes power, and all the emotions they've suppressed rise like a quiet storm that no one saw coming. Because when an INFJ has had enough, when they've been misunderstood, manipulated, or taken for granted for too long, their rage isn't explosive, it's surgical. It cuts through illusion and exposes truth with terrifying accuracy. This isn't the rage of destruction, it's the rage of awakening. The moment they stop absorbing everyone else's pain and start demanding emotional accountability. The moment they stop explaining their worth and start enforcing it. And when that happens, people finally see the depth of what they've been dealing with all along. Not a fragile empath, but a force of moral precision and quiet fire. In this video, we'll uncover what truly happens when an INFJ reaches their breaking point, how their suppressed emotions transform into insight, why their calm rage is more powerful than anger, and how their silence becomes the loudest form of strength. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to Brainy 1, the home of deep thinkers, quiet warriors, and emotionally intelligent souls. And if you've ever reached your own quiet breaking point, comment awakened calm below, so I'll know you're one of the INFJs who finally learned that peace and power can coexist. The INFJ endures silently until emotional exhaustion forces transformation. An INFJ strength has always been their quiet endurance. They absorb emotions like rain, patiently, consistently, without complaint. They carry the moods of others, the unspoken tension in conversations, the invisible weight of relationships, all while pretending everything's fine. For them, silence is both a shield and a prison. They endure because they hope people will eventually see their intentions, appreciate their empathy, and treat their gentleness with care. But that day rarely comes. Instead, their kindness is mistaken for limitless capacity, and slowly, their emotional energy starts to drain. At first, the signs of exhaustion are subtle. They withdraw a little more, smile a little less, laugh but without light behind it. They still show up but not fully. They're running on emotional autopilot, surviving instead of connecting. And yet, even in that fatigue, they keep trying to hold everything together for others, never for themselves. Until one day, something small breaks the illusion. A single disrespect, a repeated dismissal, a quiet betrayal, and suddenly, all the pain they've ignored gathers into one undeniable truth. They're done pretending this doesn't hurt. That moment is where transformation begins. The INFJ doesn't explode, they evolve. Their exhaustion becomes clarity. They begin to see how much of their empathy was spent on people who never offered reciprocity. They stop taking responsibility for everyone's healing and start choosing their own peace. Their silence, once heavy with sadness, becomes filled with awareness. They're no longer trying to prove they're good. They're learning that being whole matters more. This transformation is quiet but irreversible. The INFJ begins to say no without guilt. They stop absorbing energy that isn't theirs to carry. They no longer chase understanding from people committed to misunderstanding them. Their kindness remains, but it's guarded, selective, intentional, sacred. They still care deeply, but they no longer bleed for it. And from that exhaustion, something beautiful is born: power. The kind of power that doesn't seek revenge, but radiates peace so strong it can't be disturbed. Because when an INFJ finally reaches the point of emotional depletion, they don't become bitter, they become unshakable. Their silence stops being endurance, it becomes evolution. Their suppressed emotions don't explode, they evolve into clarity and precision. When an INFJ finally reaches the edge of their emotional endurance, there's no outburst, no screaming, no chaos. The transformation happens in silence. The emotions they've carried, the disappointment, the anger, the sadness, don't erupt outward, they crystallize inward. Everything that once overwhelmed them suddenly sharpens into awareness. The INFJ begins to see everything with startling clarity: who respects their boundaries and who only pretends to, who genuinely cares and who manipulates with kindness. Their emotions, once tangled and heavy, evolve into focus. They no longer react from pain, they respond from power. This is where the INFJ becomes dangerous in the most composed way. Their rage doesn't look like destruction, it looks like understanding. They stop arguing, stop defending, and simply observe. Every suppressed feeling that used to weigh them down now fuels their discernment. They can see through deception effortlessly. Their intuition, once blurred by empathy, becomes razor sharp. People who once took advantage of their kindness start to feel uneasy because the ENFJ's calm no longer feels soft. It feels final. What most don't realize is that this evolution is survival. For an INFJ, emotional suppression wasn't weakness, it was patience. They were collecting data, patterns, truths hidden behind words. And when that patience runs out, what emerges isn't chaos, it's control. They no longer waste energy trying to fix what's already broken. Instead, they redirect that power into building stronger boundaries, clearer choices, and a version of themselves that no longer tolerates confusion disguised as love. This new clarity transforms how they move through the world. They begin to speak less, but every word lands with impact. They smile less, but every glance holds meaning. They no longer seek peace externally, they create it internally. Their silence becomes unsettling because it carries understanding deeper than most can face. And in that stillness, they don't lose their heart, they master it. Because an INFJ's suppressed emotions were never meant to destroy, they were meant to refine. And once they evolve into clarity, there's no going back. They stop reacting emotionally and start operating with precision. They begin to see people's true intentions with unfiltered honesty. When an INFJ reaches their breaking point, one of the first shifts they experience is a brutal kind of clarity. For years, they gave people the benefit of the doubt, assuming good intentions, even when actions said otherwise. They excused coldness as stress, lies as misunderstandings, and selfishness as insecurity. Their empathy always looked for the wounded child behind the harmful behavior, but something changes after too much disappointment. Their intuition, that quiet voice they once questioned, becomes their compass. They stop explaining away red flags and start seeing them for what they are: truth. It's not a cynical awakening, it's an honest one. The INFJ's emotional lens clears, and suddenly people become transparent. They notice tone before words, energy before gestures. They pick up on inconsistencies like a radar, how someone's kindness feels rehearsed, or how their apologies lack sincerity. They start to see what's beneath the surface. And for the first time, they trust their perception completely. It's not paranoia, it's pattern recognition. Their gift of empathy, once used to comfort, now serves as protection. This shift is quiet but profound. The INFJ doesn't call people out or start arguments. They simply stop engaging in illusions. The manipulator, who once thrived on emotional confusion, suddenly finds no response. The friend who relied on guilt notices distance. The partner who took advantage of forgiveness senses withdrawal. Because the INFJ no longer entertains what's fake, they only respond to authenticity. Seeing people clearly is both freeing and painful. It means realizing that some relationships were built on illusion. It means accepting that some people never cared as deeply as they did, but it also means liberation, the end of self-betrayal. They no longer cling to potential or hope that someone will change. They see what is, not what could be. From this point forward, the INFJ lives differently. They navigate life with unfiltered honesty, not to judge, but to stay aligned. Their intuition becomes their armor, their clarity, their peace. And though this awareness may isolate them, it also empowers them. Because once an INFJ starts seeing people's true intentions, they stop living in illusion and start living in truth. Their empathy turns from forgiveness into discernment. An INFJ's empathy has always been both their greatest gift and their deepest wound. They've forgiven people who never apologized, understood those who never tried to change, and offered compassion to those who mistook it for weakness. For years, they believed empathy meant endless tolerance, that to be kind was to accept everything. But after reaching their breaking point, something inside them shifts. Their empathy doesn't disappear, it evolves. It turns from automatic forgiveness into conscious discernment. They start realizing that understanding someone's pain doesn't mean excusing their behavior. They can feel where a person's wounds come from without absorbing them. They can love deeply while still saying no. This is the moment the INFJ begins to protect their heart with wisdom instead of guilt. They've learned that forgiveness without boundaries is self-abandonment. So now they forgive quietly, but they don't reopen the same door twice. Their empathy stops being a weakness to exploit and becomes a mirror that reflects truth. This transformation gives their energy a new kind of power, calm, measured, and steady. When they listen, it's not to absorb, but to understand. When they care, it's not to fix, but to observe whether the connection is mutual. Their empathy sharpens like a blade wrapped in velvet, gentle to the touch, but impossible to deceive. They begin to sense intentions long before words are spoken. Who's genuine, who's manipulating, who's still wearing a mask. And with that discernment comes a peace they've never known before. People start to feel the difference. The INFJ who once offered endless second chances now moves with quiet selectivity. They don't withdraw love, they refine it. They no longer chase emotional validation because they finally understand true empathy must include yourself. Their forgiveness becomes internal, a way to release pain, not reinvite it. And that's what makes them powerful. They can still feel everything deeply, but they decide what deserves that depth. They can still forgive, but only once. They can still love, but only where love is safe. Their empathy, once a source of exhaustion, becomes their greatest form of intelligence. Because when an INFJ's empathy turns into discernment, it no longer drains them. It protects them. When pushed too far, their calm becomes unnerving, and their silence terrifying. There's a specific kind of stillness that comes over an INFJ when they've finally had enough. A quiet that doesn't ask for attention, but demands it. People who know them expect emotional responses, empathy, patience, understanding. But when those vanish and the INFJ becomes completely still, the energy in the room shifts. Their calm stops feeling gentle. It becomes unreadable. Their silence, once a source of comfort, suddenly feels like a mirror, one that reflects everything unspoken back at you. Because when an INFJ stops reacting, it means they've already processed, decided, and detached. This isn't rage in the way most people understand it. It's not yelling or tears. It's a withdrawal of emotional access. The INFJ no longer offers understanding, no longer softens their words, no longer tries to make others feel safe. Their voice lowers, their eyes sharpen, and their expression turns steady, not angry, but absolute. That composure is what makes their rage so unsettling. It's the silence before a storm that's already passed. The people who push them too far don't realize it yet, but the damage has already been measured and judged. When an INFJ reaches that point, every word they say, or choose not to say, carries power. Their silence speaks of finality, not confusion. It's the sound of boundaries locking into place. They won't argue. They won't explain. They'll simply stop showing up where their presence was taken for granted, and that quiet exit leaves a void people can't fill. Because when an INFJ removes their emotional energy, the connection loses its heartbeat. To outsiders, it may seem like overreaction, but for the INFJ, this calm is self-preservation, the moment they choose inner peace over emotional chaos. Their silence isn't passive, it's controlled strength. It's the final chapter before transformation, because when an INFJ's patience runs out, they don't burn bridges, they let them crumble naturally under the weight of truth. And that's what makes their calm terrifying. It's not born of anger, but of understanding. The kind of understanding that ends everything without needing a single word. They stop explaining themselves and start enforcing boundaries with finality. For most of their lives, the INFJ's instinct has been to explain, to soften their truth so others won't misunderstand, to justify their distance so no one feels hurt, to make peace even when it costs them their own. They've rewritten their words, swallowed their needs, and bent their boundaries just to maintain harmony. But when they finally reach their breaking point, that pattern ends completely. The INFJ no longer wastes emotional energy trying to make others comfortable with their truth. They realize that explaining themselves to people committed to misunderstanding them is just another form of self-betrayal. This is the moment when their boundaries become solid, not flexible, not negotiable. They no longer say maybe when they mean no. They no longer stay in conversations that drain their spirit. They stop engaging in endless emotional loops with people who twist their words. Their silence becomes their statement. Their distance becomes their defense. They enforce peace like it's sacred ground, because for them, it is. At first, this transformation confuses people. The INFJ, who used to accommodate everything, suddenly seems colder, sharper, and unapproachable. But what they don't see is the peace behind that shift, the deep relief that comes from no longer trying to justify what feels right. The INFJ isn't angry. They're finally aligned. They no longer explain their intuition, they trust it. They don't ask for understanding, they act from it. Every decision becomes clean, intentional, and final. And those boundaries aren't walls. They're doors that only open for authenticity. The INFJ will still love deeply, but now that love is reserved for those who respect their limits. They'll still listen, but not to those who weaponize their kindness. They'll still care, but not at the expense of themselves. This is what emotional maturity looks like for them: choosing peace over approval, solitude over shallow company, truth over endless discussion. From the outside, it may look like detachment, but it's actually liberation. Because when the INFJ stops explaining and starts enforcing boundaries, they stop living to be understood and start living to be free. And that kind of freedom, once claimed, is never given back. Their rage isn't chaos, it's righteous justice disguised as composure. When an INFJ finally reaches their limit, their rage doesn't look like fire, it looks like ice. There are no outbursts, no shouting matches, no emotional scenes. Instead, there's a chilling calm that settles over them, the kind that makes even the most confident person hesitate. Their rage is not impulsive, it's earned. It's the accumulation of every time they were dismissed, manipulated, or taken advantage of, all distilled into quiet, deliberate clarity. They don't seek revenge, they seek balance. And that's what makes it so powerful. The INFJ's form of rage isn't about destruction, it's about restoration. It's justice delivered through silence, boundaries, and detachment. The people who wronged them often don't even realize the shift until it's too late. The empath who once forgave everything no longer responds. The friend who always understood stops returning calls. The partner who always soothed now watches the INFJ's warmth vanish completely. It's not punishment, it's consequence. Their calm is their verdict, and their withdrawal is the sentence. What makes this composure so unnerving is how measured it feels. The INFJ doesn't act from emotion anymore, they act from truth. Every decision is grounded in principle. Every silence is intentional. They no longer try to convince others of their pain. They let their absence speak for them. And that quiet justice carries more impact than any outburst ever could. Because while others scream to be heard, the INFJ simply stops giving access. And that silence hits harder than words. Their rage is rooted in morality, not malice. They can forgive, but they'll never forget. They can move on, but they'll never return. And in that emotional stillness lies a form of power that unsettles those who once thought they had control. The INFJ doesn't destroy lives, they expose them. Their presence once brought comfort. Now, their absence reveals truth. To outsiders, it looks like cold detachment. But to the INFJ, it's justice, delivered without cruelty, fueled by clarity, because their rage isn't about getting even. It's about reclaiming balance. It's the final transformation of pain into power, and when that happens, their composure becomes something divine, not chaos, but quiet retribution from a soul that finally refuses to be mistreated again. After the breaking point, they rise stronger, detached, focused, and untouchable. When an INFJ finally reaches the other side of their breaking point, they don't just recover, they transform. What once broke them now becomes the foundation of their strength. The same heart that was once too forgiving turns into one guided by clarity. The same mind that overanalyzed everything now moves with calm precision. They rise, not with bitterness, but with boundaries, not with anger, but with peace. Their energy becomes grounded, their focus razor sharp, and their soul untouchable. This rebirth doesn't happen overnight. It comes after countless nights of overthinking, questioning, and replaying every moment they were misunderstood or undervalued. But through that pain, the INFJ learns something life-changing, that peace is built, not found. They stop waiting for others to give it and start creating it themselves. Their attention shifts inward. They begin investing in their growth, their purpose, their solitude. The world that once drained them now fuels them because they've learned how to protect their energy like sacred fire. People who knew the old INFJ often don't recognize this version. The once endlessly accommodating soul now moves with quiet certainty. They no longer justify their distance or explain their choices. They understand that silence is power and detachment is freedom. They are still kind, but their kindness is no longer free. It's earned. They're still compassionate, but only toward those who match their honesty. This evolved INFJ doesn't crave validation anymore. They don't chase closure, and they no longer seek to prove their worth to anyone. Their intuition becomes their leader, their solitude their sanctuary. And because of that, they radiate an energy that feels both calm and unapproachable, not because they've stopped caring, but because they've stopped bleeding for what doesn't deserve them. Their focus turns toward purpose, creative work, personal growth, spiritual alignment. They begin living life on their own terms, detached from noise and emotional manipulation. Their peace becomes their statement, and their presence, their power. After the breaking point, the INFJ doesn't return to who they were. They rise as someone new, wiser, calmer, unshakably centered. They've become the version of themselves that pain was preparing them for all along, detached, focused, and untouchable. When an INFJ reaches their breaking point, it's not the end, it's the beginning of who they were always meant to be. They stop chasing understanding and start embodying it. They stop fighting to be heard and start walking in quiet power. Their rage turns into wisdom, their silence into strength, and their peace into something sacred. What once drained them now refines them. They become grounded, sharp, and unshakably calm, a storm that no longer needs to roar to be felt. Because that's the truth about the INFJ transformation. It's not loud, it's surgical, it doesn't destroy, it rebuilds. Every time they're broken, they return clearer, stronger, and harder to reach. Not because they've lost their heart, but because they've learned how to protect it. If you've ever been that INFJ, the one who stayed silent too long, who carried too much, and who finally chose peace over pain, this is your reminder. You didn't become cold, you became wise. Before you go, make sure to subscribe to Brainy, where deep thinkers, quiet observers, and emotionally intelligent minds come to rise above the noise. And tell me in the comments, what was the aha moment that finally made you stop explaining yourself and start protecting your peace?